Hello, this is Digital Byte Computing. We're going to talk about DHCP. What does it do? What is the purpose of this thing called DHCP? You may have heard about it, and we're going to talk about it right after this. So my name is Emilio. I work in IT and I love technology. And today we're going to talk about DHCP and what is its purpose. So DHCP stands for Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. You don't need to remember what that is, but as long as you know what DHCP is, that's a good starting point. So you may be wondering, how does a computer on a network get an IP address? In a nutshell, DHCP is what does that. So there is what will be called a DHCP server, or something that is servicing a DHCP protocol, and that is the point of DHCP, is to assign an IP address and a whole bunch of other information to a computer or a server on the network. So you can set up a IP address manually. So you can go into the settings of the IP address on a computer, on a tablet, on a phone, for example, and you can manually give it an IP address. But the beauty with DHCP is it'll allocate an IP address automatically from a predetermined IP range. So you can have an IP range set up on a DHCP server somewhere, for example, 192.168.1.1 through to 192.168.1.50. So what it'll generally do is when a computer goes and looks for an IP address on a DHCP server, it'll assign the first available IP in the range. So if I've got 192.168.1 through to 50, and 1, 2, 3 are already assigned to something else, it'll then go and assign it 192.168.1.4 as the first IP address that is available. So it'll automatically do a sequence, then the next device will get number 5, the next device will get number 6, number 7, number 8, etc. So it will assign an IP address to a computer on the network from 1 to 50. Automatically. You don't have to bother with anything. You don't have to bother with setting up an IP address manually on a computer, on an iPhone, on an Android, on a tablet, on many other things. It'll automatically, go out and search the network, find a service that is running DHCP. DHCP will then go and give it the information to give it an IP address. Now, on top of that, DHCP will also give it a, you can set it up to give the gateway, right, the router's IP address, and also the DNS IPs as well. So your DNS primary and your secondary. And DHCP can also give a lot of other information, such as the time service, like an NTP time service, and a whole range of other things, which is very, very cool. But we're not going to go into the details of exactly what DHCP can provide, but it can provide a whole lot of other IP information, DNS information to a computer or a mobile device on your network. So what will happen is a computer that is on the network, whether you plug it in physically with a network cable, or if you're connecting to a Wi-Fi network, say at home or in a business, the computer will connect to that network, and then it will start to probe the network looking for a DHCP service, something that's out there that is recognizing itself and saying, hey, I'm a DHCP service, I can give you an IP address, I can give you a gateway. And it'll then go assign an IP based on those predetermined settings that are configured on your DHCP server. Now, a DHCP server can be configured on a network device. It can also be configured on some other form of hardware or a software-based DHCP server, such as a Windows server running DHCP. You can configure on a Mac or on a Linux server, or even desktop as well, and actually set it up as a DHCP service so that it can establish some communication. If you're running in a home environment, for example, and you're wondering how, I've never configured DHCP, how are my computers and my my iOS devices or whatever devices you've got on your network, how are they getting the IP address automatically? I never configured a DHCP server. Well, most of the time when you have your router that may have been provided to you by your ISP, or you may have bought a router from your local IT shop and just plugged it in, DHCP is likely configured and installed by default, and it's already acting as a DHCP service and setting out IP addresses to your network. So it can be done automatically that way. If you want to have a bit more control, you can set up a DHCP server such as Windows Server and set up the DHCP service on top of your Windows Server environment, and then you can configure a whole bunch of more things. You can see the leases. So this is something that's important, is when you assign a computer or a network device, something on your network, a IP address that is given to it from a DHCP server, that IP address will now have a lease attached to it. So the DHCP server will come and say, here you go computer A, and here you go iPhone A. This is your IP address, and you can keep it for 8 hours or 7 days or 1 month. You can actually set the time that computer will have that IP address. As soon as that time expires, that computer will then go back and say, hey, DHCP server, I need a new IP address. And then the DHCP server will then go and give it and assign it a new IP address. So it works with leases, which is very, very handy. Generally what you'll find is on your home routers, you can set up just one single zone for your IP, for your DHCP service to assign IP addresses. So what I mean by that is I can have a zone from 172.168.1 through to 172.168.2 and all that range, and that is all that it'll give it, right? So when a computer goes and searches it, it'll assign a network based on that. In a enterprise or in a business environment, what will happen is you can set up multiple zones in a DHCP server, for example. And as long as you've got all of the routes in place in the background, you can have multiple devices. You can have your printers, you can have your laptops, your desktops, your iOS devices, your servers, all in different IP ranges, in different subnets. All right, so what I mean by that is you can have your printers on 172.16.1 subnet, you can have your computers on 192.168.1, you can have your servers on 192.168.2, etc. And then if you've got all the routes in place, it'll automatically go and find that IP range, that subnet range from the DHCP server. You can have your VLAN set up and your subnet set up and all of your routes in place and all your firewall rules in place, and it'll go and assign the IP range that it needs based on these defined zones within the DHCP server itself. So the thing to remember is that DHCP assigns a dynamic IP address. You may have heard the term static and dynamic IP addresses. A static IP, hence the name static, is something that will never change. It will not move. So you can go in and create a IP address on a computer, on a phone, on a tablet, on a game console, and you can statically put that IP address in. You can manually go in and put in your IP address 192.168.1.50, and it will never change if it's a static IP. So that computer, because it has a static IP, will not need to go out onto the network and look for a DHCP service or a server running. The dynamic IP is a computer or a device that is set to automatically assign itself an IP address. In that case, that computer will go out and get an IP address, and the reason that it's called dynamic is because that IP can change. So once that lease expires, for example, it will then it could renew the same IP, but it could also renew a new IP. So dynamic means it'll change. It could change multiple times over the span of the lifetime of a device based on what your leases are set up on that DHCP server. You can set up exclusions to certain IP addresses. So let's say, for example, I've got the range 1 through to 254. All right, 192.168.1.1 through to 254, that is my IP range. And I want to have all of my devices on my network configured within that range. But there are certain devices that I want to have a static IP address set up. I want my router to have .100 set up by default. I want perhaps my Mac or my Windows server set up on 50 and on 150. So what you can do on the DHCP server is you don't want DHCP to go and assign .50 to another computer if there's a static computer set up with a static IP of .50. So on that range, you can say, okay, I want DHCP to give IPs from 1 through to 254, but I want IP 50, IP 100, and IP 150 excluded from this. So it will assign 99 and 101, but it will not assign 100 because you've statically put into the DHCP server that 100 is excluded because there's another device using that out on your network. DHCP is brilliant. If you are already using it, well, your chances are you are already using it if your computer is automatically getting an IP. And you may be asking, well, why do all my devices, why does my iPhone and why does my Apple TV automatically get a new IP? What's happening? Well, it's probably going to your router, getting a DHCP server. If you're in a business, how does my computer know its IP address? Well, it's probably going out and saying, hey, where's a DHCP server? And he goes out and finds it, assigns its IP address, does it all automatically in the background without you having to worry about setting up static IPs and IP manually across all of your devices on a network. It goes and does it automatically without you having to bother with it. The great thing is you can actually log into a DHCP server as well and actually see what computers are, being leased an IP. So you can go into the DHCP list and you can see all of the clients, all of my desktops, my laptops, my phones, my printers, anything that's on my network, and it will give you the MAC address and it will tell you this computer is using this IP address. So you can actually go and statically see what is being assigned to it. You can renew the lease from a DHCP server. You can remove that computer from your DHCP and it'll force it to go and get a new IP address. That is my overview of what DHCP is. What are the things that DHCP can give you? It is a fantastic protocol that is available across all vendors. So this is not just a Microsoft thing. It's available across Apple, Microsoft, all your Linux products, and all of anything that's really working on the TCP IP framework, right? So it's really any device that connects to some form of network somewhere, it'll go and be able to use DHCP, which is fantastic. So that is my overview. So if you found that video helpful, please like it and subscribe to my channel Digital by Computing just on the button there for more videos.